Hello everyone and welcome to today's Wild Rift guide. In today's guide we're taking a look at the daring bombardier Corki. Corki is a ranged marksman that can be played in either the dragon lane or the mid lane. Corki is a fairly easy champion to pick up and play due to his kit being easy to understand with no crazy combos to learn. Although Corki doesn't have any crowd control, he makes up for it with his insane DPS potential that can easily one-shot enemy carries in the late game. Moving on to the build with Corki. Now, even though his itemization is a lot of AD items, his passive actually turns most of his damage into AP damage, making him a hybrid champion, which I'll explain a little bit later on in the ability section. But most of the time you want to go for this AD crit build with Corki, with the first item being Essence Reaver. It gives you a lot of attack damage, crit rate and ability haste. And the good thing about Essence Reaver is the Mana Siphon passive, which attacks restores 3% of your missing mana on hits. Now, Corki can run out of mana quite quickly because you are spamming a lot of abilities to poke down the enemy champions. Essence Reaver helps a little bit with that. You can go for Manamune instead if you want to as well. That also works really well with Corki, but it's a little bit slower. It takes a little bit of time to stack up, but it does allow you to spam more abilities. So it kind of depends on your playstyle. You then have Infinity Edge for a lot of attack damage, crit rate, and allowing your crits to deal 30% more damage, which is quite nice. And the good thing is that you don't really need to build Solari Charge Blade until later on, probably until about the third item. The reason being is that Solari Charge Blade doesn't give you that extra 25% crit anymore. It just gives you the extra, well, it gives you quite a lot of extra damage really, with the bonus magic damage, and also that bonus magic damage can now crit, making Solari Charge Blade more of a late game item. So you only want to really build this item when you hit 75 or above crit rate, which is what you'll get. So you'll get a lot of attack damage from the Essence Reaver plus Infinity Edge combo, and then you'll get Solari Charge Blade, so you've got 75% crit chance, and you also get to deal that bonus magic damage. Now, as just mentioned, most of Corki's damage is going to be converted into magic damage, meaning that you actually want to build Void Star for the magic penetration. Now, Grudge and Mortal Reminder basically doesn't work on Corki, and I wouldn't recommend building it on Corki. Now, even though, like I said, you're building AD items, most of your damage is being converted into magic damage. So it's really important to make sure you build Void Staff to get the extra magic damage and to get that magic penetration. And then for the last item, you can go for Storm Razor. Now, this can be switched. You can build Storm Razor earlier if you want to. In my opinion, I don't think the energized stacks and the extra slow that you get is really beneficial for Corki. Again, you don't really need that little bit of extra attack speed, but you can build it as a last item to go for 100% crit rate. So you're going to be dealing a lot of burst damage when it gets into the late game. For the boots, most of the time you want to go for plated steel caps. You can go for Mercury treads, but to be honest, Corki is a very safe champion. The Gluttonous Greaves doesn't really work. It does work a little bit because it does give you physical and magical vamps. You get a little bit of magical vamp in there to help you. So it can work in some situations, but most of the time, defensive boots are a better option. And then you want to go for Stasis enchant to just allow you to play a little bit safer. For the runes, Conqueror, really good rune for Corki because you're able to gain stacks of adaptive force really quickly by using all your abilities and also auto attacking quite a lot, and then you get to have the bonus AD damage, which will most of the time be converted into AP damage. For the next rune, Triumph is really the only good option. You can go for Brutal if you want a little bit of early game damage. Most of the time that extra AD adaptive damage that you're going to get is going to be converted into AP damage anyway, which kind of struggle with Corki because all of this adaptive damage you're going to be getting is AD, because you're going to be building a lot of AD items, but it doesn't actually benefit you that much because most of your damage is going to get converted into AP damage. It's the same really with Gathering Storm, with Hunter Vampirism as well. Weakness doesn't really help. You can go for Champion if you really want to, but to be honest, Corki is a more of a late game scaling champion, so Triumph is just the best option and kind of the only option overall. Again, the Resolve tree, Hunter Titan, you can switch this up depending on the matchup, but Hunter Titan is really good, allowing you to get that tenacity and extra health every single time you get a unique takedown. And the same with Hunter Genius as well, getting a little bit of extra ability haste every single time you get a unique takedown. And then for the summer spells, you have Flash and Exhaust. Exhaust is really good for marksman, especially in the mid lane and in the duo lane, because if you get into them 1 versus 1 situations, you can use the Exhaust to slow their movement speed, slow their attack speed as well. So you can use that to walk up, auto attack, and use your abilities to deal a bunch of damage. Now let's take a look at Corki's abilities. First up is his passive, which is Hextech Munitions. You have two parts of the passive. The first part is Hextech Shrapnel, which I mentioned a little bit already in the build section, but attacks deal a percentage of physical damage plus a percentage of magic damage. Now, as you can see by the percentage numbers, you deal a lot more magic damage compared to physical damage. Now, even though you're building a lot of AD items, most of your damage will be magic damage, and I'll show you quickly how it works with the auto attacks. So with your auto attacks, you can see here that every single time I auto attack, there's a magic number which is in blue, and there's a physical number which is in red. Now, as you can see, the magic number is a lot higher than the physical damage number. That's why most of the time you want to go for Void Staff, because you deal a lot of magic damage with all your abilities, which means that you're going to be dealing that extra magic penetration from your auto attacks and from all your abilities. The second part of the passive is called the package. So after 4 minutes into the game, the package is delivered to Corki's base. Corki can pick up to gain the ability to cast Special Delivery, which is an upgraded version of your Valkyrie, the second ability, which grants him movement speed out of combat for 60 seconds, and a new package arrives every 150 seconds. So you can see the package is in base at the moment, so all you have to do to pick it up is just walk over it. There's a little timer, and as you can see, you have the package, which means you have the upgraded version of your second ability. So as you can see, the second ability is going to be absolutely huge now, which is what makes Corki really important during them all important team fights around dragons. Most of the time you can use your package, as you can see, to go across the entirety of the dragon pit, which is what makes it really important, because 4 minutes is the part where Herald and Dragon spawn. So you need to make sure you go back to base at that 4-minute mark to pick up your package to make that big massive impact during them team fights. Next up, we have Corki's first ability, which is Phosphorus Bomb. Corki fires a bomb dealing magic damage and granting vision of the area. It's a pretty self-explanatory ability. As you can see, it's just a little area of effect ability. Has quite a lot of range as well, so you can use this in the lane to farm minions or to poke early on, which is normally what you do. When you fire the ability, as you can see, it takes a little bit of time, so it's a little bit delayed until it lands on the floor, but it grants vision of the target dummy. So if I go and put a enemy target dummy in this bush, for example, if I get rid of the fog of war for a second, if I use my Phosphorus Bomb on that, there you can see that it reveals the enemies for a few seconds, and you can see the timer that goes down until you can't see them anymore. So really good ability for checking bushes, for poking in lane, and for dealing quite a lot of damage. For the next ability, we have Valkyrie. Now let's quickly talk about the special delivery part first, which is his passive. Enemies are knocked aside and the zone deals magic damage per second for 5 seconds and slows for 90%. So when you have your package up, when you collect it at 4 minutes or any other point in the game, if you use it next to a target dummy or next to an enemy, you can see that it will push enemies to a side, and if enemies or target dummies are standing over the package, they will deal damage over time. So really important to make sure you use the package as kind of like a zoning tool, really. And then you have the normal Valkyrie, which you can use straight after the package if you need to, which dashes forward, leaving a flaming zone that deals a magic damage per second for a few seconds. So it's just a normal Valkyrie that allows you to just go over walls. As you can see, not as big as your passive, as your special delivery, but what makes Corki really a really safe champion. It doesn't really have a high cooldown in any way, 11.6 seconds, so it's not too bad. So every 10-ish seconds you can use this, which means that you can use it to get away to safety or even dash forward. But as I mentioned, the most important thing is that you can use this Valkyrie straight after special delivery. So if you go a little bit too far with special delivery, you can use Valkyrie to get back towards your team, or to even go further forward to try and get that killing blow. For the third ability, we have a Gatling Gun, which fires his Gatling Gun dealing physical damage per second for 4 seconds and shreds up to 20 armor and magic resist for a few seconds. Now, Gatling Gun is kind of what makes Black Cleaver Corki really a thing, to be honest with you, because the extra shred that you get from the armor and magic resist also works with the Black Cleaver shred as well, which means that the Gatling Gun per second when you're dealing damage with it will also stack with the Black Cleaver passive. But I wouldn't really recommend Black Cleaver. I just thought I'd mention it briefly in this guide. And Corki always fires towards the current target. So all it is just a Gatling gun. You can see that when you're moving around, when you're moving and you're switching targets to a target dummy, this, you kind of have to make sure that you're focusing the Gatling gun in the right area. So every time that you walk towards a target that you're already targeting, so as you can see, it will always fire towards that target. So if I move the target over here, you can see the Gatling gun will always fire in that direction. You have to make sure you swap targets all the time when using the Gatling gun, whether it's to auto attack, whether it's to do anything else. It's really important to make sure you're focusing on the right target with the Gatling gun, which means that, you know, you can deal shred damage. As you can see, every single second, you can see how much damage you're dealing. Is quite a lot. So you shred armor, you shred magic resist as well, which is what makes Corki really good against tanks as well. So even though you've got hybrid damage at the same time, so you're building both magic and attack damage, which means that Corki's really hard to itemize against. You're also going to be shredding armor and magic resist at the same time, so it just makes Corki insanely strong at the moment. And lastly, we have Missile Barrage, which is Corki's ultimate. Fires a missile dealing magic damage, and you also have a big Missile Barrage as well, which comes up every so often. So every third missile, the fire deals more magic damage and has increased range and blast radius. Now your ultimate, and knowing when you have your big massive missile available, is just underneath your mana bar. So the yellow little icons are your small missiles. So as you can see here, I can use a couple of small missiles. And then every single time you get onto the red one, you can see that your ultimate icon actually turns to red, so that you know that you have your red missile available, and that means that it's going to deal extra damage and also have a bigger radius as well. Now if I quickly turn off the 0 CD, you can see that when you spam your ultimate, eventually you will actually run out of bullets. This can happen during the game, which means that the cooldown is going to be quite a little bit until you get another rocket up and available. You can see that above the little ultimate icon, there's a number which tells you how many rockets you have available. And as you can see, as that timer is going around, that's how much the kind of reload time is, I guess, for Corki's ultimate. So as you can see, it's going to turn to 2, and then it will turn into 3 afterwards as well. So making sure that you stack up your ultimate is also quite important. You can use this for poke during the laning phase, but Corki's ultimate actually surprisingly deals a lot of damage. So you can use this until you get to your ultimate, until you get to that big barrage. So when it gets to the team fights, you can use that big ultimate with the big missile and deal a lot of damage. Onto the leveling priority with Corki. At level 1, you want to go for your first ability. As I mentioned with the ability, you can use this as poke in the early game. It's quite easy to hit as well, even though there is a little bit of a delay because the area of effect is so big. Now at level 2, if you want to play a little bit more passive, you can go for your second ability, which is mainly what I go for, but sometimes you can go for your third ability as well if you want to play a little bit more aggressive and get that early armor and magic resist reduction. Then at level 3, you want to go for your third ability, and for your first ability, you want to make sure you max your first ability. Now your first ability is your kind of main damage source outside of your auto attacks really. It allows your base damage to go up by quite a bit, and even though the cost goes up, it is definitely worth it. Then you want to go for your third ability. This is your other damaging ability option. It increases the base damage and also increases the amount of armor and magic resist you can reduce. And then leveling up your second ability last. Make sure you level up your ultimate when possible. Now, that's everything with Corki. As I mentioned, he's a pretty easy champion to understand. There's not really any combos with Corki. It's just making sure you land your abilities and you use your auto attacks in between your abilities, which is going to be the main important thing. Now, onto the gameplay now. Hopefully you enjoy the gameplay, and I'll see you all in just a second. Alright, onto the gameplay with Corki. Now, Corki is not really a early game champion, to be honest with you. You can do quite a lot of damage in the early game with the poke from your first ability, which you'll probably see in the laning phase. But most of the time you want to wait and you want to scale really with Corki before you get to that point where you really feel like you're impactful. Especially during the first dragon fight, you know, with the package. That's kind of where Corki comes online after like the first few items as well. Now Corki Lulu is not really the best lane. I wouldn't really call Corki a hyper carry, but he can, you know, you can work quite well with Lulu, because Lulu giving you some extra auto attack damage is quite nice, and obviously the extra magic damage on top as well from Lulu's auto attacks can also be very, very helpful. So it's not the best combo. Corki's not like, you know, a Jinx or a Kai'Sa or a Xayah in a way, because your auto attack speed is not going to be that high. But Lulu helps you a little bit with that, with getting some extra attack speed. So even though you're going for a build that's kind of like Essence Reaver Infinity Edge, so a lot of attack damage and not a lot of attack speed, Lulu can help you a little bit with that attack speed. Now, in the early lane phase, you can see that most of the time I will be using my first ability to poke during lane phase. As you can see, this is mainly what you want to do the whole time. You don't really want to be sitting back and doing nothing with Corki, even though he's the late game champion, because you can do quite a lot of damage with your first ability, and it doesn't use that much mana early on as well. So every single time you have the opportunity, always trying to walk up and always try and use your first ability, especially against someone like a Jinx as well, that doesn't really have a lot of range in the early game unless she uses her rocket form. So with the Blitzcrank, obviously you want to make sure that you want to be standing behind the minions where you can. I'm going to be just trying to push up this lane as much as possible and trying to get the cannon minion where I can, because Jinx is trying to auto attack all the time as well, and every time Jinx tries to auto attack, you can see that I'm always going to try and use my first ability off cooldown. You don't want to be spamming it too much. As you can see, I'm kind of below half my health at the moment, but most of the time you can still use it for auto attacks. You can see here I'm using my third ability with the auto attacks as well. And even though Nunu is here, I can use my flash and my W to get away to safety, which normally means that we'll all be okay, and then Lulu will use the flash as well. So a really good gank, to be fair, by the by the Nunu. Blitzcrank using the hook, and I was actually going to kill the Blitzcrank there as well because he was quite low on health, but flashed away as well on top of that. So a little bit annoying that Nunu's down here, but Nunu's one of them champions that's really, really good in early game ganks, so I kind of should have expected it when I was playing really, really aggressive. And sometimes that can kind of be your downside, I guess, with Corki, is that when you poke a lot with Corki, you'll realize that the enemy ADC will be really, really low. And as you can see here, there's also a Twisted Fate coming down into the dual lane as well. So it's a full fiesta in the dual lane at the moment, with Nunu and Twisted Fate both coming down to help out the Jinx a little bit, which is, you know, to be honest, really, really good play by the enemy team, because they realized that the Jinx was falling behind a little bit early on. As you can see, Blitzcrank went a little bit too far. I was able to sidestep his dodge, but I don't think he's going to die for it anyway. It's a little bit of a crazy fiesta in the early game, which you always love to see. You always love to see fiestas in the bot lane. I feel like it always happens every time I play bot lane. Every time I'm playing barrel lane, there's also fiesta in the barrel lane. So I feel like everywhere I go, there's always a fiesta. But yeah, really, really good. Kind of, I guess, good in a way that we were able to survive both the Twisted Fate gang and also the Nunu gank as well, showing that Corki can play very passive and can escape difficult situations with his Valkyrie. You see, Lulu is so close, and Nunu is here again for the second time. As you can see, I'm pinging away the Nunu. Like, come on, guys. Like, Nunu's here again. As you can see, I can't do that much damage against the Nunu in the early game, because Nunu is quite a tanky boy in the early game. As you can see, Twisted Fate is also down here as well. So another 4-man gank into the duo lane, and we're still able to survive anyway. So as you can see, the Lulu's getting a little bit mad as well. So the Jinx survived on like 1 HP, and I was able to survive afterwards. But as you can see here, I'm going to look to play aggressive because I know the rest of the team is at the dragon. I'm using my auto attacks, use my rockets, and again, he still survives on a slither of health. And I'm pretty sure I die here for this as well, which is a little bit unfortunate. Oh no, I didn't die here. I thought I was going to die there, but I forgot I had exhaust and everything as well. As you can see, the dragon's being taken. I could have maybe moved towards the rest of my team to try and use the kind of use a numbers advantage because Jinx was still in the lane, but I thought I could have killed Jinx there, but unfortunately my big rocket wasn't available at the time. I'm trying to bait the rest of the team in here at the moment because I know Dinah's here, but they probably have vision around the dragons, so nothing going by there. It's a little bit of an interesting early game. Again, my decision making, I think it was the correct call, in my opinion, to go for that Jinx. Because the rest of the team was over by Dragon, I know that Jinx wouldn't have had enough damage that early on. But again, the problem was is that I didn't have my big missile with my ultimate available. I think if I had my big missile instead of my little small missile, I crit as well. So I was able to crit and deal a lot of damage with my auto attacks. But yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't able to do anything else. 4 minutes is into the game. We're 4 minutes into the game now. I'm going to pick up the package because even though Dragons are not available, I can still use a package to get back to lane quicker and maybe try and make a play in the laning phase. I don't really want to move up to the Rift Herald because if they do that, then Jinx can push the tower really, really easily. You can see Irelia is starting to move down as well, so we can maybe look to try and make a play in this dual lane. At the moment, he's just sitting in the bush. But instead of me playing passive and instead of me having the brain, I unfortunately used my package already. Like, this would have been a really good situation here. I would have used my package. I really would have been here as well. My package would have been going forward, but unfortunately I got hit by the Blitzcrank hook. And again, I play a little bit too aggressive again. I have to flash away from the ultimate and everything as well. So this is the kind of thing that this is going to happen most of the time as a Dragon Lane. I'm glad this happens as well, so I can kind of explain the situation. So most of the time as a Dragon Lane carry, your support will always roam up to the Rift Herald. That's always going to happen. Don't flame your support for it, because it's going to happen. Because most of the time the supports roam up to the Rift Herald, because the Rift Herald is a very important objective, which is why most of the time you see the Dragon Lane carries kind of have a 1 versus 1. Now in this situation, I was in a 1 versus 2. Now unfortunately my team lost the Rift Herald. As you can see, I'm going to play aggressive here and use my exhaust to kill the Jinx. Twist of Fate comes as well, but Lulu still has her ultimate, so I have my big missile available on my auto attacks, and we're able to get a nice and easy double kill. So as you can see, Jinx Lulu is still a pretty good combo. You can get a lot of auto attacks with the shield from Lulu. I don't know if Lulu actually had her Ardent Sensor there and available. I'm not too sure what build she went in the end. But still, showing that Lulu Corki can still be a really good combo, and the Lulu ultimate was very, very important there to surviving. Gonna wait in base for our boots of speed to get back to lane a little bit easier. You can see the Blitzcrank is now roaming around, which is why I went for that play in the Dragon Lane in the first place, because I knew that Blitzcrank was now roaming around. You see the Lulu's also roaming around, and now I know that I'm ahead of Jinx. I'm really, really strong now. I'm ahead of this Jinx, and with Lulu by my side as well with the ultimate and all the shields and the extra movement speed as well. It's really nice to try and go for a... I maybe could have gone for a play here again onto the Jinx. To try and get a kill, but I've been a little bit too passive. But the problem is at the moment is that the Rift Herald is being pushed in mid lane, so Lulu should have really roamed a little bit earlier in this situation to try and defend the mid lane tower and try and defend the roam from Blitzcrank. Probably could have gone for maybe a tower dive as well here, but Lulu decided to roam instead. But already lost the mid lane tower, already took half of the health off the other mid lane, off the tier 2 mid lane tower as well. Now you can see how annoying Jinx can be for Corki. When she's in the situation where she has the rockets, and as you can see, it's a little bit of a misplay from me. I took too much damage from the auto attacks from the rockets, and the Twist of Fate was able to flash gold card me, and I didn't have anything available to protect me. If I had barrier there, I could have used barrier instead, but I tried to focus on using the Valkyrie instead of staying within range to use my exhaust. And yeah, as you can see, I died for it. So Jinx was just kind of baiting me out in the end. But now that the dragon's up and available, I have my package as well, which is going to be very, very awesome for this next team fight. We're going to try and get in there. The dragon's already taken though, and nothing is going to come of it. So again, my package is probably not going to be used for anything useful, which not really what you want as a Corki. Most of the time you want your package to be the most important thing for Corki in the early lane and trying to get you that advantage to get you them objectives. But it's kind of difficult because we have an Amumu jungle against the Nunu, so Amumu not really the best jungler. Nunu is a pretty good jungler now, especially because of the changes as well. And especially because Nunu is the best jungler, in my opinion, trying to use the extra... what's the word called? I'm trying to think what the word's called. The extra consume smite combo to try and get the killing blow onto the dragon. As you can see, they go for a little bit of a crazy tower dive here. I use my package to escape. The reason why I stepped up there and I played aggressive is because I knew I had package available. If I didn't have package available, then I probably wouldn't have stepped up that aggressive. And we actually get ourselves a nice cheeky quadra kill. Even though I die for it, I get a nice cheeky quadra kill for it, which is not too bad, to be fair. It turned into a pretty bad situation with another TF ultimate and another Nunu going down into bot lane. Actually turned into us getting into a quadra kill, which we're now 6-2 now. So we got the Essence Reaver, we got the Infinity Edge as well. But really good rotations by the rest of my team to be able to defend that tower dive as well. But this game was just a complete fiesta in the dual lane, and it kind of shows that sometimes, even though you're going to get ganked a lot as a Corki, because the early game, as I mentioned, you're not very strong as a Corki, you can still play very passive, and you can still do quite a lot in the early game. As you can see, I feel a little bit confident now. I know that I have my Infinity Edge plus my Essence Reaver. I have my Lulu Ultimate as well, so I can play a little bit aggressive. I think the Lulu Ultimate was a little bit too early here because I wasn't really in a lot of danger. But I know that I can play aggressive now because Lulu has a lot of shields and healing available. And I can also do a lot of crit damage now, because I'm my Essence Reaver, and I have my Infinity Edge. So yeah, sometimes you can play a little bit more aggressive if you have your package available. You don't have to use your package aggressively all the time during dragon fights. You can use it into a situation where, okay, I'm going to walk up and I'm going to auto attack, and then I'm going to use my package defensively. Because the good thing about Corki package is that you pretty much become basically invulnerable when you're going through the Corki ultimate. You can kind of stop anything that is kind of coming in your path, and then you can use that to escape to safety. Now, it's a bit of a difficult situation for us to be in because we don't have the dual lane tower available. I'm going to use my package to get away from the what's the word called? From the Nunu ultimate. I've completely forgot the name of the Nunu ultimate was, though, to be honest with you. You see Jinx is trying to play a little bit too aggressive. To be honest, I don't know how this Jinx got away with everything that she got away with just then, just being able to auto-attack as much as she could, and she was able to get a triple kill, and then TF got another kill as well. So a little bit overextension there by my Amumu and by my Irelia, but to be honest, I probably didn't need to be anywhere near that. I probably could have played a little bit more defensive towards my tower, but I used the exhaust on the Jinx to try and stop the damage output, but unfortunately was enough. She was able to get her resets, and even though she's going like Hurricane Bloodthirster, which is a little bit of a weird build path, but yeah, you can see that on my stream I was explaining the same situation as what I was explaining here. So if my Irelia waited a little bit because Irelia didn't have a tower, both me, Amumu, and Lulu were roaming down. So, excuse me, we could have given a little bit of a helping hand to Irelia, but unfortunately she died before everything else happened. I can see I do get a little bit caught out here by pretty much everything. So again, I have to use my package way to safety. But actually doesn't turn into a bad situation because most of their team walked onto the package there, or some of their team walked onto the package. You can see Lulu's getting a little bit caught out herself now as well. Use my Valkyrie to get away from the Blitzcrank Kurt. You can see I'm playing a little bit aggressive. I know the Jinx doesn't have her ultimate now, so I can use all my abilities as much as possible. And then we bait the rest of the team into going in to try and play aggressive and try and get the kill on me. But unfortunately, they couldn't. I know that I'm not healthy enough to help with the dragon, so instead I'm going to go for the Rift Herald. But luckily enough, the Irelia actually steals the Rift Herald. And, not steals the Rift Herald, sorry, steals the dragon, so we get the Infernal Dragon for ourselves, and we get ourselves a few other kills as well. And then a really intense 1 versus 1 battle between the Diana and the Blitzcrank works out in our favour. So again, it's knowing kind of your limits really with Corki, because sometimes you can get caught out with Corki, but if you have package, as I mentioned, you can get away to safety, and kind of use the cooldowns, or kind of bait the cooldowns of the enemy carries. So I baited a lot there, you know, I baited the Blitzcrank ultimate, the Jinx as well was auto-attacking quite a lot, the Picker cards as well from TF wasn't up and available during certain times, and then Jinx was walking forward as well, but I knew at that point that the Lulu shield was up and available, so I can walk forward and I can use the auto-attacks and use my abilities to win that little duel with Jinx, which means that the rest of my abilities from my team were back up and available, like Diana ultimate. And again, I was kind of basing the rest of my team. But I knew that I had to buy stasis at this point, because we're getting to the point in the game now that Twisted Fate can kind of one-shot me, to be honest with you. It's kind of scary because Yasuo can one-shot me as well. I'm trying to remember what else they have in their team. Obviously, Jinx as well. To kind of stop her passive as well, to kind of stop her getting her resets. Jinx is a little bit out of position, but Amumu kind of went in a little bit too late, but was really, really good combo though. Jinx stepped a little bit too far, to be honest. I have no idea why the Jinx stepped that far in that situation. You can see that annoyingly the Yasuo wall is up, so I can't really do too much against the Yasuo, but I flash away to safety and we get the ace. So we're going to go for the inhibitor now. I think we try and go for the finish here, but I'm not too sure if we actually finish the game. I'm trying to remember because I played a lot of games with Corki. I think this is probably one of the best builds with Corki, to be honest. I believe we try and go for the finish. I think we actually do get the finish here, if I remember correctly. Yeah, the Nexus bonus is not there, and we do get the finish with Corki. So even though we were camped quite a lot in the duo lane, we still came out on top. And even though I didn't get really the full build, I think you can see with them 3 items, Essence Reaver, Infinity Edge, and Solari Charge Blade, they can do a lot of damage. We did get MVP as well. You can see with our damage, 33,000 damage in a 15-minute game of Wild Rift is quite disgusting. Yeah, even, you know, I think it's way and above everyone else. I mean, TF did quite a lot of damage as well, but I think his roaming definitely benefited a lot with that. But yeah, Corki, really, really strong champion, very safe and easy champion to play as well. So I definitely recommend you all picking up. Again, depending on what playstyle you want to go for, you can see with Essence Reaver, sometimes you run out of mana, so you can go for the mana immune option if you want to spam more abilities. But yeah, that's everything for today's Wild Rift guide. Thank you all for tuning in. As always, stay safe, and I'll see you all in the next Wild Rift video. Peace.